Hey y'all, it's Kelly from Dixie Darlins Tumblers, and today I've got something a little bit different than what my typical style is. But several of y'all had asked me for a tutorial on the pink drink, and specifically one of my sweet Facebook group members, Lydia from Canada, and then she created one in the meantime, and hers is beautiful, so I hope that I can do it justice. So I'm actually going to use a 20-ounce slim from the Steel Magnolia, and then I'm going to use some acrylic paints, and then April and I at the Vinyl Cottage kind of put together a pattern set of strawberries that are different sizes and shapes, and I actually use water slides as well as adhesive vinyl decals to kind of create some depth in the cup. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. As always, ask any questions. I'm here to help however I can. I will list all the products that I use in the description box below, so make sure you check out those links, as well as I've included some discount codes for y'all. So, and please subscribe so you don't miss my future tutorials. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope y'all enjoy it. So today I'm starting with a 20-ounce slim from the Steel Magnolia, and I've sanded it and I've spray painted it candy pink. And then I'm going to go in, after I let that dry for about an hour, I'm going to go in with my water slides. So I got with April at the Vinyl Cottage, and we kind of created a pack of different sizes and shapes of these strawberries. And then I print them off in water slides and adhesive vinyl decals. So at first I'm just going to apply my water slides. And these are printed on a laser printer, and so I always reverse the image so I can lay them face down and then just slide the paper off the background. And I don't really have a specific way I'm going to put them on the cup. So I'm just going to try to make them as random as possible. So up, down, sideways, and where there's space in between, because I know that I'm going to layer a couple of layers of the strawberries over here. So I know as I add a layer, I'm going to kind of build the coverage of them. So I'm starting out with this first one, and they're going to be pretty random and spread out. And then y'all can see I'm just going to work my way around the cup, but I lay them face down and kind of use the backing to smooth them out, and then use my little silicone brush here to wipe off the water, and then the paper towel to get the excess from there off. So then after I've made sure that they're all down really good and all the water's pressed out of the back, I am going to go right into my next layer of epoxy. So I've mixed up more than I'm going to need just for the cup here, because I'm going to add some acrylic paints into it and swirl it over. So this coat right here, I just want a very thin layer here, especially since I'm going to add in some acrylic paints, and I'm not really sure how many colors I'm going to use or what, you know. I wanted these, I kind of start with, okay, an idea in mind, and I have a couple of colors, different color paints that I'm going to use, but I'm not really sure until I get them mixed up how many and, you know, what all I'm going to get to. So I always make sure I mix up extra epoxy. So here I've mixed up about 30 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm only applying very minimal to the cup. I just want a very thin layer to start with. And this process, I'm gonna walk through it, but a lot of it'll just be mostly y'all maybe just watching the movements of how I do it, how I apply the acrylic paint, and then I blend it in, and then I kind of go back in and touch up here and there. And I'm basically covering up the strawberries, but I don't want them completely covered up. And here I'm adding a couple of paints into my epoxy. I will link those in the description box below. They're just two different paints, two different pinks that I added in together to try to get a blend of the color that I wanted. So you can kind of see I just add a very little bit, a couple of drops of each paint, otherwise they'll get way too stringy. And I'm just going to basically drizzle, I'm going to start by drizzling these off over on the cup, because I know I want a pretty good coverage on here. So I'm just going to spread it out, use my glove to, you know, go ahead and spread, especially the bottom out. I'm going to go ahead and wipe some across the top. And I know that I want a good amount of coverage, but I just want some of these strawberries to show, especially since I'm going to keep layering. So I'm going to stop talking and just let you guys watch. That's probably the easiest thing to do. There's not a lot of information I can provide really, other than I'm just going to apply it over the cup and go back in and just take out areas that I think, just little bits and pieces where I want them to show through, but I definitely want just a little bit of this first layer showing through. And then after I get this pretty well covered with my pink that I'm mixing in, I will add the torch just to pop any bubbles to start with. and then just kind of let it sit for a minute before I start working with it again, because I know it's going to be a little bit runnier just because I've just added some heat to it. And then once I've let that set up for just a few minutes, I am going to go in with my heat gun here. And just because if you've worked with acrylic paints and epoxy, you know, they have a tendency to want to just rotate straight around. So I want to try to get some up and down movement using my heat gun here. And I apologize for my hand kind of being in the way. It's kind of hard to show you guys especially when you're working right on top of the cup. So I'm basically just trying to thin it out in certain areas and get more of an up and down movement versus just where it's, you know, swirling around the cup without actually having to take the cup off the turner. I found this is the easiest way to do it. Just use the heat gun to kind of disperse the acrylic paints up and down on the cup. And then I decided that I wanted a little bit more pink in here, just for a little bit heavier coverage in areas that seem to be thinned out a little bit too much. So I just go back in, add a little bit more. And because there's already some heat there, it tends to work into the layer of epoxy pretty well. But I still don't, you know, I want it to be more of a blending effect. So I'm gonna go back here with my heat gun again and just kind of blow that out again, see if I can get some up and down movement again without it just looking kind of like stripes going around the cup. And then I'm going to take my little silicone brush here and just kind of spread it out and start thinning it out where you still have some areas that are a little bit more open than others. So obviously I want you to be able to see some of the strawberries here. So I'm just going to go back in and kind of pull off maybe some of the bottom areas, or, you know, just so you can see them through the paint. And then I do go back in just because when you tend to move the paint around like that in the epoxy, it does get a few bubbles. So I'm just going to hit it real quick with my torch. And then I let that coat dry for about 8 hours just because it's got acrylic paint in it and tends to maybe take a little bit longer to dry to me. I just want to make sure that it's good and dry. So then I've gone in and I've added some of my adhesive vinyl stickers here, these decals. So again, I'm just trying to do them in a mix of sizes and shapes, and I'm just layering them up on top, still in a random pattern, but you know, kind of just layering them on top of the ones that you can see underneath. And then I'm going to go in and add some water slides as well, just so it gives it a little bit different dimension. You know, they're a little more transparent. So just to give it a different feel, you know, when you're looking at an actual cup of the pink drink, I actually had somebody walk by me with one in their hand. I was like, can I look at that for a second? So, you know, it's so hard to capture, you know, the actual, like, sometimes the strawberries will be right up against the cup. So I'm just trying to create as much dimension here as I can that would look most like what the actual drink does look like. And then here, after I've made sure that all the water's wiped off, I am gonna go into my next layer of epoxy. And again, I'm just adding Counterculture's Artist Resin. I'm gonna use about 20 milliliters on here. I probably mixed up 30 just so I have some extra again, because I am gonna go back in with the same acrylic paints that I used as before. So I just wanted a little spare here just to make sure, you know, like last time I had to go back in and add a little bit more after the fact. So I always want to make sure that I have enough mixed up. So first I'm just making sure that the cup is good and coated with just the clear epoxy before I'm going to go in and lay the acrylics like I did before. And then this time, I'm not gonna add the second pink. I'm just gonna add the Hydrangea pink, this acrylic paint. It was a lighter color, so as I started layering up, a lot of times when you look at the drink, there's lighter dimensions in it, especially if there's ice in it. So the lighter, I wanted on the top coats, I wanted to use a lighter color. So this time I'm just using the Hydrangea pink. And again, I've just added a couple of drops just because I don't want this to be too stringy and I do want it to lay into the epoxy pretty well. It really just takes like a couple of coats. So you see again, I'm just gonna lay this over into the epoxy that's already there, and then I'll end up going back and spreading it out, and I'll just let you guys watch it instead of, you don't need any commentary from me. And then I'm just gonna go back in with my heat gun again. So just to disperse it a little bit, to separate it out. I don't have as thick of a coat as the actual acrylics on this time. So I just wanna spread it out as much as I can. And then I will go back in and, you know, leave some openings where you can still see the strawberries. Even though I'm spreading this out, I'm gonna make it pretty opaque over the strawberries. You'll see I just kind of go back in and clean out some of those areas still, even though I'm going to add one more layer of strawberries after this. And I'm not going to add a full layer, just a couple here and there. And then here I'm starting to go back in with my silicone tool again and spread out, but then also pull some of it off so I can make sure that I see the strawberries that I want to. And then, yeah, there's still some coverage over them. Then I'm going back in with a little bit more pink just because I think there needs to be a little bit more coverage. Even though I've spread it out, I still think there needs to be a little bit more coverage on this layer. And then once I let that layer dry for about another 6 to 8 hours, just because I want to make sure it's good and dry before I go put the decal on, I have printed off this little circle with the stars, and I'm going to go ahead and apply my decal. And then this is a special little surprise for a special kiddo. So I'm going to add her monogram to the center. So I think it's one of those things that you could add anything you wanted to, really. I was just trying to make it closely resemble the pink drink without actually resembling the pink drink. So, but you can add whatever logo you want to. I just thought this was a cute idea to do the circle monogram instead of adding some kind of picture here. And you definitely could print these off together by welding them. I didn't like the way it was trying to weld them together in Design Space, so I ended up just printing them off separately. Even though I sized them within Design Space, I just printed them off separately because I didn't, you know, sometimes it wants to space it weird. So I didn't like the way it was spacing it in Design Space, so I didn't want to weld them together. So I just did it separately, and then I'm going to apply my little monogram here. And this is just a deep green. I'm not sure what the color's called. It's just an Oracle vinyl that I'm using here. You could use whatever color green you want. And then as soon as I've applied my decal, I'm just going to go into my next layer of epoxy. And I've mixed up Counterculture's Artist Resin here again. I'm going to use about 25 milliliters of epoxy. just because it does tend to sometimes be a little curvy if you've used the acrylic paint like I have. It doesn't want to lay smooth, so I use a little bit more of epoxy than I normally would in this layer, just because I do want it to spread out. So, and here we've got the final design. I hope that you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Please ask any questions that you have, as always. This was just my interpretation of the pink cup. I can't wait to see what you guys create. Please tag me in your creations. Join my Facebook group, Dixie Darlins Tumblers, so you can show us your creations. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun, crazy stuff. Thank y'all so much for watching, and I'll see y'all again soon.